Okay, let's talk about one of the most fascinating characters in literary history. This is the story of Emilio Salgari, Italy's absolute master of adventure fiction. He was a guy who created these epic, sprawling, exotic worlds for millions of readers, but he did it all without ever really leaving his own hometown.
Loves to suck the brains of his slain enemies. Wow. I mean, that's how one of the most ferocious pirates in all of fiction was described. Sandokan, the tiger of Malaysia. He was a hero so brutal, so primal, that his stories just completely captivated an entire country.
So, when you hear a description like that, who do you picture writing it? You're probably thinking of a hardened sailor, right? Someone with leathery skin who's seen it all, maybe survived a shipwreck, stared down a tiger in a real jungle, a person who really lived it.
But here is the big twist in this story. Unlike his contemporaries, guys like Joseph Conrad, who was a sailor, or Jack London, who was a legit adventurer, Emilio Salgari was a journalist from Verona. The guy who wrote these incredible globe-trotting sagas, yeah, he hardly traveled at all.
So you've got to be asking, how did he pull that off? Well, it all starts with the incredible persona Salgari built for himself. See, he didn't just write about a sea captain. In a way, he decided he was going to become one. I mean, listen to this. He actually wrote this for his own publisher, building up this whole backstory for himself as this world-weary sea captain. It was a complete and total fabrication, but it was all part of the myth, to make his stories feel authentic. And he didn't just write the part, he really lived it. Right there in his hometown, he went around claiming he had a captain's license, one he actually failed the test for. He'd wear these wild outfits, even a turban. He would sign love letters to his own wife as the savage Malay. And get this, when a journalist dared to make fun of him for it, Salgari challenged the guy to a sword duel and won. He was all in. But for all the dueling and the turbans and the tall tales, the simple truth was this. He never left Italy. His one and only sea voyage was a short trip he took as a cabin boy along the Italian coast. All those grand adventures, they were 100% imaginary. And that, of course, just brings up an even bigger question. If he wasn't out there sailing the seven seas, how on earth did he create these worlds that felt so real, people actually believed he'd been to all those places? No, really, think about that for a second. How does a man who's never set foot in a jungle describe its suffocating heat so perfectly? How does someone who has never been to the Caribbean write about pirates and naval battles with such incredible photographic detail? Well, his secret wasn't a ship's logbook. It was a library. Salgari was just a relentless, obsessive researcher. He absolutely devoured encyclopedias, scientific journals, travel magazines, anything he could get his hands on. He even moved his family to the port city of Genoa for a while, just so he could hang out and talk to real sailors to soak up their stories and all the technical jargon. And what was the result of all this meticulous work? An absolutely staggering amount of writing. We're talking over 200 novels and stories, and every single one is set in some far-flung, vividly realized corner of the globe. He built an entire universe, not from memory, but from ink and paper. And just listen to this little snippet from his book, The Black Corsair. You see, this isn't just someone listing facts from an encyclopedia. He had this magical ability to transform dry scientific data into pure poetry. You can feel the awe in his words, like he's describing something he actually saw. That was his genius. So, in a way, he wasn't really lying. His adventures were absolutely real. They just unfolded in the most exotic and uncharted territory of them all. His own incredibly powerful imagination, which was fueled by an unbelievable amount of research. But this whole story, well, it builds to a much darker final chapter. Because for all the fame and wonder his imaginary worlds brought him, his actual day-to-day reality was just filled with struggle and tragedy. First, let's just be clear about his legacy. It is immense. He inspired generations of writers, filmmakers, and thinkers. You've got giants like Umberto Eco and Federico Fellini who were huge fans. And then there's Che Guevara, who claimed to have read 62 of Salgari's books and said their anti-imperialist themes were a major influence on him. Wild, right? And yet, here's the tragic irony. There was this huge disconnect between his fame and his fortune. He was one of Italy's most beloved authors. He was even knighted by the Queen. But he never saw the money. He was basically a writing machine churning out book after book, but these predatory publishers forced him to sell the rights for cheap, which kept his large family in what he called continuous semi-poverty.
And that leads to this, the most heartbreaking moment of all. In a letter he wrote to the very publishers who got rich off his work, he wrote these final devastating words. It's just a gut punch indictment of a system that completely consumed his talent.
On that day in 1911, Salgari's final act was just as dramatic and ritualistic as anything he ever wrote. He left 3 letters on his desk, one for his kids, one for his publishers, one for the press. Then he walked into the hills outside of Turin and took his own life in the manner of a samurai. It was a final, tragic performance from the ultimate storyteller.
So at the end of it all, you're left with this question. Who was he? Was he a liar, a charlatan who built a whole career on a fantasy? Was he a literary genius who proved that imagination can be even more powerful than real-life experience? Or was he just a tragic figure, defeated by a reality that could never, ever live up to the incredible worlds that he created in his head? Maybe the truth is, he was all 3.